Right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. My name is Guillermo Figueroa, and it's my pleasure to introduce the moderator for the crypto panel, Jeremy Kauffman. Please take it away.
Hello, welcome everyone. So, if you look in the schedule, it says there's a crypto panel, and as far as I can tell, there's no description other than the people that are here on the panel. So, I'm gonna introduce all of these people in just a moment. In fact, actually, why don't we do that first, and then I'll ask the question that I have for you guys, which is about what you guys want to get out of this. So.
Zeiler, Bitcoin, so I made Anypay, so I make Bitcoin software, and glad to be here.
Chris Pacia. I primarily work on Bazaar and lead developers on that project, and also contribute to Bitcoin Cash.
So could you tell people what Bazaar is?
Yes, Bazaar is a decentralized e-commerce marketplace similar to Logical, which you have seen
I'm on the business side due to Bitcoin through Walker, ironically, and made the intellectual shift. Got my first Bitcoin here at LBRY Forum in 2013. Been part of the pre-state project in and around it for several years. And went back to my native state of Wyoming to get started on fixing its money transmitter license, which actually was one of the 3 worst in the country with regard to cryptocurrencies and coming in all the crypto businesses out of the state. And then the whole thing snowballed, and 2 years later, we have 13 new laws implemented in Wyoming. I just stepped down, so I can go back to the private
Hi, I'm desi-rae. I'm here representing the Bazaar project. As Chris said, it's a decentralized privacy platform. I also run a podcast. It's called Crypto Ramble. It focuses on cryptocurrency and privacy. And I also run a political podcast called I also do oil painting. So that's me. Thank you.
Thank you. And I realized I actually didn't say, I just said hi, I'm Jeremy Kauffman, but just for my background, I'm the CEO of LBRY, LBRY, which is a blockchain-based digital content platform. So I have some knowledge both of, and I have a computer science background, so I have knowledge of both the tech and sort of some of the business side stuff here on crypto. So as I started to say when I introduced this, I don't know what we're going to talk about, right? You say we're talking about crypto, but we can talk about 16 different things, and we can talk about each of those 16 things for an hour. So just real quick, we're going to get into it, but I just wanted to poll people, just raise your hand if you're interested in hearing, because I got a whole bunch of stuff I can talk about, and I can make stuff up. So who wants to hear sort of just like, who's sort of new to crypto, wants to be hearing like first principles, crypto intro type stuff? Okay, a couple people. Who is looking for like, I'm super deep into crypto and I just want to hear these people talk about the current events, of the opining on the stuff for the last, couple of weeks, last couple of months. Okay, decent number of hands, maybe a third people. Who's looking just for sort of like less topical, more big picture, grand, talking about what is crypto, why does it matter? Okay. Looking for specific stories about these people's specific companies, what they've been facing, what they've been seeing, specific to their companies. Okay, seeing a lot of hands. That's up there with the big picture stuff. We had a decent number of hands for sort of that big picture question, so I'll just start with this one. In your view, we don't maybe need to all explain exactly what crypto is. Maybe at least one person can say what crypto is. You can add on to that if you didn't like what that first person said. And why does it matter? What is this? How do you see this? Why does crypto matter? What's important about it? So with actually, we'll start with Desiree, just to mix it up.
Why does crypto matter?
If you could just first say sort of like what is it briefly, and then why does it matter? Yeah.
Well, crypto refers to a bunch of different things. It means the blockchain, which is used to measure the technology behind cryptocurrencies. But it also refers to, I think, the idealism behind encryption and having privacy, removing society from state surveillance and the state being involved in everything centralized authorities. So I would say that encompasses cryptocurrencies, and it's important because there could be a technological shift in the future where, for say payments, we can improve the technology existing within the systems we already have, but then also there could be ideological transformation where we come to rely on ourselves for things that we do every day, such as business and commerce and things like that.
Caitlin?
Yeah, I think that's a great add, or a great definition. The only thing I would add is This technology is really powerful because it enables shared infrastructure. So when there are parties that need to share data with each other, and they don't necessarily know each other, certainly don't trust each other, this technology enables the sharing of that infrastructure. So the applications of that are to not just the new cryptocurrency use case, but also in other parts of the economy where you do have companies that need to share information with each other and currently are duplicating and reconciling that information. There's a tremendous amount of waste in duplication and reconciliation. Think about, if you ever had a paper check and flipped it over and saw how many institutions touched that paper check, every single one of them is processing that check. There are people, there's energy consumed, there are auditors involved. All of that is duplication that can literally go away. I'm also a big believer in the trustless factor here. Our trust has been so abused by the traditional financial industry, and I've lived it in my Wall Street career. And I thought for a while that we might be able to actually change the existing system from within, but I've given up on that. And now I'm working on helping to build an entirely parallel, provably solvent financial system that's based on cryptocurrencies that will compete with the traditional one and plug into the traditional one where it can.
I don't have a whole lot to add on to that other than cryptocurrency, cryptography in general is kind of it's an empowerment tool. It kind of puts the ability to control your own information and what other people are able to access back into your hands in ways that in most of our interactions with businesses and institutions and society, there is that level of trust involved. They're not going to censor me. I'm going to trust that they're not going to confiscate my payments and these sorts of things. This type of technology has been sort of a long time in the making. Like, I don't know, the crypto anarchist manifesto, how long ago was that now?
Tim May?
Yeah.
That's I think that's around 25 years old now.
Yeah, so it's been a very long time in the making, and I would argue still not there because these tools aren't mainstream, but that's kind of where we're trying to get to.
All very good points. The trouble is, it's hard for us all to trust each other, and it's especially hard for competing businesses to trust each other. And competing businesses around the world, it's been hard to trust information from people. And what the word crypto comes from the word cryptography, and it sounds like it's based on encrypting things, making them obscure and hidden, but really it's about creating verifiable information using cryptography with something called a digital signature. So it's all about being able to trust information with that your competitors aren't lying and that all the information is verified and you can share and collaborate without having to see if people are lying or not, because we have digital signatures that are mathematical proof that information is correct and that there's no lies. So we can build a whole economy on a very mathematically sound set of information using cryptography, and that's why it's called crypto.
Thank you. So I thought those were great answers about what crypto is and why it matters. Let's talk about where we are with it, and feel free to either talk about where your company is specifically with it, or where you see the industry as a whole. We heard Chris just say this is something that's been going on for 25 years. I don't know, Bitcoin obviously isn't that old, but the movement, the idea of some of these ideas that led to it are that old. Where are we with it? Is this like the perpetual, surely this is the year of desktop Linux, and it just becomes a meme, and we're always going to be the 1%, or what? So let's start with Caitlin. Start in the middle this time.
Oh, thanks. Barely in the first inning. I would say that the real breakthrough in Bitcoin, at least from a business person's perspective who's not a developer, the way I like to phrase it is, we actually now have data that can be verifiably scarce, and someone can actually own that data. Up until Satoshi's breakthrough, there was no possibility of having something that's a digital collectible. And we now have that thanks to Satoshi. And that is that has profound implications for the ability, for how society organizes itself, and essentially turns the entire financial industry, the traditional financial industry, on its head. At a very high level, the way I like to think about it, having worked in it for so many years, the IT architecture of traditional companies, of not just traditional banks, but of course they're included in that, is everything is behind a very strong firewall, and for the most part, if somebody breaks into that firewall, that data is unencrypted. But it's all very centralized, right? We're moving away from that a little bit, but that's the basic thing, that you've got unencrypted data inside a firewall in a central organization that maintains it. This new technology is everything's encrypted without a firewall, living in the wilds of the internet, attacked every day, and gets stronger and stronger every day precisely because it's decentralized. Those two things don't mesh well. And it's part of the reason why I think the two systems are going to remain fairly separate. So I think we're just in the first inning of figuring it out, because that invention is only 11 years old.
Let's go around this way and end with them.
My view is I kind of feel like I don't know. I mean, I see where Hiten comes from. I also get Jeremy's point, like, are we going to be perpetually saying this is the year of the next best one?
To be clear, my role here is to be provocateur, not to.
I don't know if I really know the answer to that. I mean, there's some things that go on in the space that are very positive, and it makes you very optimistic. But for people who have been working in the space for quite a while now, if you asked us kind of where we thought we would be today, I thought we would probably be, well, I would have said I think we're either going to be nowhere or like much farther advanced, and we're kind of in this middle area where, like, this gray area where we've made some progress but not to the point where we otherwise would have been. So it's still kind of a lot of unknowns, I would say.
I agree that it's very, very early. So everyone who says, I wish I bought Bitcoins early, like, you ever hear that? Definitely, it's pretty early. Now, I don't know which one's going to succeed. There's huge competition for Bitcoins now. And the people who understand how to provide the most value are going to win. Now, so I'm totally blank. Where are we? Yes, it's early. People are adopting it in New Hampshire, but this has been going on for a long time. And I think it's becoming more mainstream now. Your point about there's these big institutions that have incentive to have firewalls, and they're not going to jive the open platform. Now, I think that because of the network effect of the growth of the internet and the value of having everyone connected, that this open system probably will continue on the trajectory of the growth of the internet, which is going to vastly outpace the closed systems because they can't connect. So I do see that Bitcoin has been on an exponential growth curve the whole time. It's actually pretty straightforward. It just started at like 2 users. So, so like, exponentiation of 2 is only a few after a few years, but the system that can bring all of the people transacting together is going to have this huge network effect that might grow even faster than the internet has. I still think that's happening, but we're in the early stages of the compounding effects. Now there's only like 10 million users or something. Or maybe there's only 10,000 real users of Bitcoin. But I still think that it's going on an exponential growth.
I think in terms of blockchain technology and businesses, that's doing really well. There's been a proliferation of startup companies that use blockchain. So that's good. And then when it comes to cryptocurrencies, I think that's also good in terms of just straight payments, but not good when it comes to fungibility. And I'm going to stress that point a bit because I specifically care about privacy. And I think the fact that mainstream institutions have become interested in the technology is very good, but it's not leading to adoption of the technology as I think the early people envisioned it would be. Is leading to these mainstream institutions adopting the technology and fitting it into what they want, which is to be expected. But that's different from just blockchain that's open and decentralized and anyone can access a permissionless blockchain. So I'm a bit worried about the institutionalization of cryptocurrencies and the crypto space, and I don't know where it will go. I think it will be a battle between open source projects and businesses and institutions trying to just box it into what already exists, and that's not necessarily what people who were really there at the beginning, as I understand it, not what they thought would come to be.
It's definitely not going to be like what you guys thought it was going to be, okay? Because you're not representative of the world. Like, we are different here. Like, it's very obvious, I hope, to everyone that what we prefer is not what other people are thinking about. So if and when Bitcoin technology becomes very adopted by the mainstream, it's not going to exhibit the ideological properties that we hold dear. It's just not going to, because that's not what the customers want. Like, there's 300 something million Americans, and they don't all want libertarian principles. Like, they have other preferences, and they're going to want something that's like stupid, simple, and they don't have to think about anything but dollars, and it's like, they just want something else. So I think if we want to use this technology, it's not going to be based on ideology. It's going to have to be a better product. It's going to have to improve their lives in ways that are just like measurably profitable, and not, I don't think people are going to buy into ideology.
Can I add?
Please.
One of the interesting things about the evolution of this industry is how we've created centralized organizations that are so important to the operation of the marketplace in the crypto space. And in spite of like Jesse Powell at Kraken telling everyone, get your coins off my exchange, I don't want you to use us as a custodian, right? He says that all the time, and yet what do most people do? They leave their coins on the exchange because they feel more comfortable that the exchange is better managing their security risk than them maintaining their own private keys. The private key management issue is a huge one, because there is a security trade-off between convenience and security, and the vast majority of crypto folks have taught themselves, have taken the time to educate themselves on how to manage their own keys. But even everybody I talk to is still worried about it every time they go and check to be sure that the crypto is still there, right? Even if you know how to manage your own private key, your blood pressure does go up every time you pull it out and roll your keys or check that they're still there, right? We've made huge advances in that. We have ledgers and Trezors and other sort of individual retail level private key management, YubiKeys, those sorts of things, right? But how many people are actually using them and storing their own private keys? How many people are actually running their own full nodes? It's still even a small percentage of us.
Yeah, clearly people want to just keep rolling, so yeah, go by all means.
I just want to add on, I think for the future, what would be really good is if these open source, sort of decentralized products that are separate from mainstream infrastructures, if they focus on competing like businesses and making the user experience very simple, that's the only way that people will actually end up choosing them. They have to be better than a Facebook version of cryptocurrency like Libra. They just have to do it better. And that's difficult because the kind of people who are, I think, in the space, I would describe them as really smart and ideologically driven and not necessarily willing to think on the level of the kind of people that they're trying to reach, which is everybody else.
Yeah, that's great. I actually want to just expand on this a little more so we can keep the subject going. Something that I talk about sometimes with my company, we view it as important that blockchain be a how, not a why. I think for a lot of us, blockchain is a why, and what I mean by that is we just like the idea of it. We just like the idea of money that's fully in our control, or we like the idea of and so the properties of the system are the why. But for a lot of people, that's not going to be why they don't care about those things. They don't share those libertarian principles. So blockchain has to be a how. It has to enable something that they couldn't do before. They have to have an experience, and they have to be able to do something that without blockchain they weren't able to do that thing, right? So what are some of these hows? Because I think blockchain needs to provide some of these hows, and that's how blockchain gets to the next level. So. Well, anyone who has thoughts on what the hows are going to be? If that makes sense.
Question on what?
Yeah. What's it going to be? Or like a how could be the collapse of a currency in Venezuela, and so there's a real need for a currency that's stable, and so they start using a stable coin, assuming they work. I'm not saying they do, but that's a how. They don't care that it's a blockchain. They care that now we're moving value around and it's stable, and we can get back to business and not have our business.
I don't know if it's going to be currency.
Yeah, I'm not saying
Caitlin's talking
that's an example of a how.
It's about data. It's all about storing and securing and trusting data and within institutions. And I think places where like long-term viability of information is key and important, that's where like the blockchain actually adds a lot of value. And so I think people are going to use it there. Like people are going to be like, oh, I want a new kind of money. I don't think that's going to work out. Maybe Venezuela collapses, but I think it's going to be within people and companies who find value in securing their data and owning it, being able to transfer ownership of it or assign rights to the data.
I think it's going to show up, again, I'm a financial services person, so biased towards that, but it's going to show up in much better payment alternatives than are available today. We use Venmos and apps like that, but those are still settling on the clunky old rails of the unstable and unfair financial system behind the scenes. And so you're still taking a credit risk to your bank. And I think these new technologies are going to enable us to speed up payments and to not have to worry about the counterparty risk associated with them. Now, to every individual in the room, is that going to matter? Probably not, but anybody who's got more than $250,000 in the bank, which is essentially pretty much every business of any reasonable size, they're worried about the counterparty risk of their banks, and they can speed up the velocity of their own capital and get therefore higher returns for their shareholders if they don't have to trap cash in their bank accounts all the time because it takes so darn long for a payment to clear. So some of these are problems that businesses are just accepting because they've never thought about it. There hasn't been an alternative. But when there are alternatives, it's kind of like Uber, right? We never really thought there could be a better way to have taxi service, and then once it showed up, everybody understood right away that's a better service. And that's ultimately, I think, what will happen.
I think a lot of people in the room thought there were better ways to do taxi service.
Understood. Nobody knew that.
David Friedman passed circa 1970s. Consult Machinery of Freedom for an early description of Uber.
I mean, Caitlin's talking like really big picture. I mean, I could just talk, maybe Desi-rae can too, about like what we use these things for. And Open Bazaar is, it really kind of, there's a lot of disenfranchised people out there on a lot of these different platforms that people use, where they're told, like, no, you're not allowed to sell that. The most recent one being people made these stuffed baby Yodas and were selling them, and Disney started making them take it down from Etsy and these marketplaces like this. And it's like, come sell your baby Yodas on Open Bazaar. So there's a lot of opportunities there where people, these other platforms, they're exercising their centralized control or having other companies like Disney dictate what they're allowed to do on their platforms, where, with technology like this, we kind of do an end around all of that, and it connects people directly to each other so that you don't have that permission party telling you what you can and cannot do.
I would continue along the lines of what Chris is saying and say that this technology can allow individuals who are being deplatformed to have stability with the platforms that they're using, because for a lot of these platforms, you think you might be doing the right thing, and then somebody doesn't like you, or somebody yells about you on some social media platform, and you're gone. And you might have invested so much into whatever you're building or doing, and then you have that immediately taken away. And for the majority of the population, that doesn't happen to them, but there's a strong, maybe small, but strong and growing amount of people who are feeling the effects of centralized authority. So I think for them, this is like a godsend. And we've met people, specifically here, when it comes to the marketplace with Particle, who were talking about sex work, and they were talking about 3D printing guns. And what they do is perfectly legal, but some people might just not want to be associated with them. And so for those people, in this aspect, even though the business aspect is also very useful, there's definitely a use case and a how for them.
Thank you.
Good point, Chris. One key takeaway is that crypto technology can help people connect directly. Like it eliminates all kinds of coordination where you have to go through some third party, and that's the most awesome thing. Like when you pay at a restaurant like Murphy's, go to Murphy's Tap Room, you pay for a beer, your money's going to go right from your Bitcoin wallet right to the owner's Bitcoin wallet, and the cashier can't touch it, and the bank can't touch it, and Anypay, like the payment processor, we don't even touch it. Like it connects people directly, and that's just in a business. But imagine that you can connect directly with people all over the world through using the blockchain. So a really good point that you're directly connecting people. So in the case of Open Bazaar software doesn't touch the money. It goes right from the customer to the business. It's pretty awesome.
Okay, all right. So I'm gonna pivot just a little bit. I have a list of sort of some like semi like rapid fire polling questions. So for these, like not like if you have something that you really want to talk longer about, but feel free to pass because you don't know about this one, or feel free to give a quick answer and move on. So in terms of coins that are doing what I would say where the clearest, strongest use case is stored value. I would say Bitcoin is in this case. It doesn't mean it's not used for other things, but it's very clearly used for that, right? What coins for stored value purposes do you think are the best or the most promising or the most exciting?
It depends on what you mean by storing value. Okay, so like people talk about storing value like I've got a Bitcoin and it's worth $5,000. Well, if it stays worth $5,000, that's storing value, right? Like or like I have gold, it's going to be worth probably, it's going to store its value. Well, there's some Bitcoin systems allow you to store other types of value. You can store information in the system. Okay, so this is a store of value that is different from anything anyone's thinking about.
I have questions about some of these other uses. I'm saying specifically the scenario is you got 100 grand. You want to make sure that that 100 grand remains fully in your control. And this is today, right? You're going to be traveling abroad. You want to make sure you have access to it. What are you doing with it? That's my question today.
What am I doing?
Yeah, what do you do? What do you do?
You mean I have $100,000 of Bitcoin?
No, well, you have $100,000 USD. You're turning it into something. What's your choice?
Oh yeah, well I'll call up Anypay. I'm gonna buy $100,000.
I'll Bitcoin.
Absolutely.
You're getting Bitcoin. That's what I'm
Whatever
asking.
you want to buy.
Okay, well, I'm asking you what you want to buy. With your,
I would say the most stable coin probably has been XRP. You want stability? I don't know.
I'm at the Chris.
I don't know if I mean, with how volatile they are, I don't know if I'd really characterize it as a good store of value. I mean, unless you're willing to accept wild swings and lose 25% on a weekly basis. And there are other investments. I mean, think of it.
So you're putting in USDT? Like
I mean, in the short term, the dollar is going to be less volatile than.
No. You had Tether.
Tether. Yeah, I mean, like a staple, if you really needed it in the cryptocurrency, if you're looking for an investment, I mean, this is a risky investment with a potential for a lot of promise, but I think that's the way you need to treat it. I wouldn't treat it as, I've got money I need to store for the long term. When you put it in cryptocurrency, you need to realize you're making an investment in like very, very risky assets.
Yeah, same thing. Bitcoin is definitely the one with the highest staying value right now, greatest liquidity, very volatile. I like the way once Bazaar talks about it, that you shouldn't put more money into it than you can afford to lose. But you should also not have any exposure to it because of the potential that it could rally. But I would also say that the greatest store of value, to be honest, is the amount of time you invest figuring this stuff out on your own.
To answer the question just with the framework given, I would say Bitcoin, just because of the network effects and that so many people already think it's going to be around. So just inertia, I would say Bitcoin, and you probably will not lose to just inflation of fiat money.
All right, desi-rae, it's not currently my favorite, just for you. Next question. She accepted the premise. Okay. I'm sorry. Next question is, all right, for the Venezuela scenario or the cup of coffee scenario, right? I think what are we doing here?
Lightning Network.
Lightning Network, Bitcoin Lightning Network. Yeah, great answer. That's a good answer.
In New Hampshire, this 50/50 Dash and Bitcoin Cash are what is being used.
Okay.
And that's all I know.
Yeah, that's great. Chris or Desiree?
I would say Lightning Network, or I would say Bitcoin Cash, just because it would probably be faster when it needs to handle a large amount of volume.
Yeah, I mean, just I'm gonna be a little biased because I work on BCH, but for small payments, I think it'll go through really quickly and work well for that case.
And how about I was going to ask about sort of next generation sort of financial apps, whether these are decentralized exchanges or the various. I don't even know anything anywhere near all the stuff that people are doing in this area, but I know there's a ton of it. Anything you guys are excited about here? Think people should know about?
The new Wyoming Special Purpose Depository Institutions.
Oh, well, now you got to say at least a little bit more about that. I mean, that's no one here. I mean, how many people here know about this? So.
These are the first 100% reserve banks that have been authorized in the United States in centuries, actually. They are state chartered banks. The law took effect October 1st. You will see, I've been volunteering in and around this area in my native state, as I mentioned. The law is designed to enable fiat to crypto on and off ramps. We obviously all have to comply with the regulations surrounding anti-money laundering, etc. So there is no censorship resistance in this. But what it does is enable the crypto industry to have its own directly owned directly to have its own responsibility for its own relationships with the banks, instead of having to be so reliant upon the three banks that are serving this industry right now. If we lose any one of those three banks in the United States, the industry's got problems getting money in and out between fiat and crypto.
Anyone? Random order's fine. Got it.
I don't know. Just one new coin, I guess, I've been working with a little bit in my day job is Filecoin, which is probably going to come out, I don't know, mid this year, I think, maybe around April, sometime around there. Filecoin, the name kind of says it all. It's a coin for decentralized storage. There are other platforms, some of whom I think may even have spoken here in past years, that have been trying to do this. This is a very difficult problem to solve. I don't know if it can be or can't be, but they've got kind of a very novel approach for doing it with Filecoin, and their team of engineers is like world class. So if anyone could kind of crack that nut, I think it would maybe be them. So that's just one to keep it there.
All right, I'm gonna keep it going unless you have an answer here.
As far as applications built on top of the
No, specifically like financial apps, like whether these are decentralized exchanges or next generation financial things that are blockchain loaded.
Well, one thing that's really changing the finance world is the blockchain is allowing people to acquire liquidity on demand. And that, like, I used to work in this financial tech company that works with a lot of banks, and there's like trillions of dollars that they have to keep money all around, and there's like huge liquidity problems. The blockchain is allowing them to reduce the liquidity costs by like huge amounts, because there's like native tokens they can transfer between banks. These banks don't have to use central banks anymore. Actually, pretty awesome. They are using these technology to avoid central banks and like larger banks. So that's cool financial application.
Cool. All right, how about in terms of blockchain land, are there any DAOs out there that you find interesting? So DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. You can think of this as like a blockchain-based joint stock corporation. So functions like a joint stock corporation, except that your shares are tokens. So you can participate anonymously and vote on contracts and that kind of thing.
We were just talking about the newest, most controversial DAO that's being proposed in Bitcoin Cash. And the idea is to create like this company that gets a portion of all the new Bitcoin Cash, and then they get to decide what to do with Bitcoin Cash. So there's different attempts to create governance in these systems. I've worked within the Dash DAO, which is probably known as the most successful DAO.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
As far as processes go, it's really interesting. First of all, anyone can be a shareholder in this company. So this may be illegal. I don't even know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think it's illegal. Okay, but it's not illegal in New Zealand where they incorporated. So anyone can be a shareholder by acquiring Dash, and then if you have enough, you can vote like a corporate shareholder. And you vote anonymously. It's like you use your public key, but they don't have to know who you are. And this like totally changes like corporate voting and corporate structure. You don't even know who the other people are. I found that is a big pain, because if we don't know who we're dealing with, then we can't negotiate. So like the Dash DAO has been going along for a long time, and there's a lot of problems because of the anonymity aspect. So there's going to be different approaches.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Dash DAO is the most successful in the sense that like it's been running the longest, it's dispersed a lot of funds. It's whether the project itself, it's still I think an open question. Any comments about either the Bitcoin Cash? He did comment about it's now open season on the Bitcoin Cash, 12.5%. So if you want to comment on that at this time, feel free as well.
No, I mean, this is just, I guess, a general problem a lot of projects have to deal with is trying to come up with financing for development. If you want like a really good development team, it's not exactly.
Actually, real quick, how many people? I bet a lot of people don't know about this exactly. So who doesn't know about? I'm just going to explain it because I'm missing people. So basically, Bitcoin Cash core developers or the core team had proposed, and in part in alignment with some of the largest miners.
No, they didn't propose it.
They just said they're doing it.
No, it was just the Chinese. It was a couple Chinese miners just said they're going to do it.
Okay. Yeah.
Basically, the idea of it, like some of the miners kind of got together and said, we think it would be a good idea to finance development with part of the block reward, like 12.5%. And the scheme they came up with was actually relatively clever. By enforcing the 12.5% of Bitcoin Cash goes to development on Bitcoin Cash chain, the way it actually ends up working out when the difficulty adjusts, the people who actually end up paying for that are the Bitcoin miners, the BTC miners. So it was like a way of kind of pushing costs off onto other people to finance development. So now, I mean, that really kind of created a lot of drama in the community. I mean, in part because, this is. In general, this is the issue we have when mining tends to get kind of centralized, is you can have a few people get together and kind of say, we're doing this, and then there's nothing you can really do about it. But I mean, at the end of the day, they are trying to solve a difficult problem of trying to raise funds. We did do last year a fundraiser, like a voluntary fundraiser for Bitcoin Cash, and it raised maybe 10-20% of what would be nice to have, for development purposes. So like just trying to get it through kind of voluntary means a little bit difficult, which is what inspired, this kind of proposal. It remains to be seen whether they're going to do it or not.
Thank you. Any other comments on DAOs or the Bitcoin Cash situation? Okay, all right, keep it moving. Did you have one?
Maybe.
Yeah, okay, well, it's one now.
Okay, I just wasn't sure. Sorry, I wasn't sure if it counted as a decentralized autonomous organization, but governance is one of the things that the particle infrastructure has tried to figure out. So it's a platform with apps that can be built on it, and the first app that's been built is a marketplace, but potentially other apps could be built, and they're gonna have to decide which apps to build based on what the community wants versus direct funds. And the way it's done is I think it's a little bit similar to Dash in terms of it's based on stake, because it's a proof of stake coin, and if enough people vote on something, then that's the way they make the decision. They make that decision. So in a sense, it is decentralized, and the funds are existing, and it's only depending on what the people who hold the coins vote for that the development takes a certain path. So I'm not sure if it was specifically related, but I thought maybe it's like a crypto blockchain figuring out how to do governance with its system.
Yeah. So related to this, and now I'm totally just sneaking in a question that I personally care here about, but maybe other people will care as well. I've been intrigued by whether there's anything that the Free State Project could do with DAOs with this kind of organizing, right? We want to have this kind of like bottom-up generation of ideas and initiatives. Not that we already have that. I'm not trying to say like we need a DAO so it can finally happen. But is there anything here that the Free State Project should be looking at that could help us? If we have some people inside of this organization, they have goals that are controversial or difficult to organize around in a traditional manner. Is there anything that's beneficial here for the Free State Project to be looking at?
If people can propose better ideas and then make money on them within this, if there's a way that we can attach like monetary value to ideas and align people's incentives so that they're not doing volunteering, like I don't know about you, but volunteering sounds like really socialist and like collectivist, that's what it really is. And so if there's a way that we can align incentives where people with good ideas maybe get some money, but from their peers, like not from a central organization, but if we can build some communication thing where like there's actually financial incentive to grow what we agree on, I think that's going to be important.
Okay. Anyone else have any thoughts on this? Okay. We have 10 minutes. Okay. All right. Well, I definitely have to get in a question about the future. So let's just get that one in now. Where are we going? I'll let you do any time frame. I always hate it when people force a time frame on me. So you can say where we're going to be in 6 months. You can say where we're going to be in 5 years. But if you have any concrete predictions, I can tell we're getting recorded. So if you want to make that now, we can point back to it later and be like, I was right. This is the time to throw down and say one of those things. Where we're going.
I think that within a year, 99% of all transactions will be on one chain and it won't be BTC.
Now, within 1 year.
Yeah, within 1 year, 99% of transactions will be on one chain and it's not BTC.
That is a very bold point. Yeah.
Which one? That's my prediction.
It's a valid prediction even without saying. He doesn't have to say a chain for it to be a valid prediction.
I know what it's thinking though. No, I don't. I mean, this stuff is so hard to predict. I mean, in general, though, it seems like there's this sentiment that things are starting to pick up a little bit. Like you kind of, I don't know, it's just my general feeling that like the price will probably be higher at the end of the year for most of these assets than the beginning. But I didn't have that same sentiment the last couple of years, so I don't know. It just seems like there's more optimism growing, but it's still kind of a cautious optimism.
Well, I just want to initially say that I don't like this question because if I make a prediction and it's probably going to be wrong, then it will look bad in the future.
You can make probabilistic predictions. Feel free to say I think it's 60% likely then.
Okay, well, I think it's 50% likely well, just looking at cryptocurrencies, the coins that are...
You're not my favorite anymore.
The coins that are in the top 20 or top 100, that will shift. And I would say that in about 5 years, that's probably going to be different. I don't know about Bitcoin. I think it's possible for it to deliver on some of the promises that people are saying it hasn't made, like scalability and really being able to be used without high transaction fees. I do think it's possible for that to turn around. So I would just say that the space is going to shift and we're going to see which companies come out actually delivering value for people so that they want to use them and they're not just attached to the idea of what it could be, sort of like the dot-com bubble in the past. There's just a lot of speculation right now, and then we're going to see a few coins come out on top. So that's a very, very vague and a little bit obvious prediction, but that's what I predict.
That's nice. But I look, just bottom affect it, right? And then everyone will think it's right, and you just win that. So it's great. No, it's good answers. All right. Okay.
I'll close by just talking about the halving, which hasn't come up yet in Bitcoin. That's going to be a very, very, very big deal. And I don't know how fast it's going to be a big deal, but it is objectively true that the inflation rate of Bitcoin is being cut in half in May.
We're not at least weak efficient market hypothesis here. We don't think that's priced in yet.
Yeah, we talked about that in the debate this morning. Yeah.
So every time people say it's priced in, and I agree, it should be. But every time the price just goes up again. So, like, I mean, who knows?
I mean, nothing's made me doubt the efficient market hypothesis more than being in crypto, so I think that's...
The efficient market hypothesis applies only if you actually have a truly free and unmanipulated price for borrowing money. This is why it doesn't apply in the traditional financial industry. I think in concept it works, but in reality, the most important price in the economy is the price of borrowing money, and it's the most manipulated price, right? Because we have central banks that actually set the price of borrowing money, and it's not set on the free market. If it were, then maybe we could conclude the efficient market hypothesis applies. How do you think about that vis-a-vis crypto? Who knows what the true price of borrowing crypto is? We have so many coin lending businesses that are popping up, but I'll tell you, here's the problem. Nobody has a clue if any of them are solvent. We have had zero, auditing and disclosure that's coming out of all of these companies right now. And so, if you're earning 8% depositing your Bitcoin in an interest-bearing account at one of the crypto lenders, well, maybe if the thing is actually only 50% solvent, 8% is, a tiny fraction of what you should be compensated for the default risk on this. We just have no clue. So it's hard to say the efficient market hypothesis actually applies here because we just don't know what the price of borrowing the risk-free underlying is. There's no visibility into that.
Thanks. We are almost out of time. And I know everyone really wants to see Kyle Mann, far more entertaining than me. So if you want to do one final plug for you, your company, your project, or anything in crypto that you think people should check out.
I want everyone who likes Bitcoin to go to coin.dance. Some really interesting charts and information that might be illuminating. Coin.dance.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can check out Open Bazaar. You can, openbazaar.org has application that you can download and install. Openbazaar.com has a little web version that doesn't work great, but it kind of shows you what's on the network. And then we have a mobile app that uses the same type of technology. It's called Haven, but it's basically Open Bazaar under the hood. If you look up Haven on the app stores, you can see it there too.
I'm not part of a formal project, so all I'll say is just everybody just commit to spending more time to educating yourselves. That's how we all learned this.
How about where should someone start with their education? I want to start learning how to read. Is there a website or a resource you recommend?
My favorite book on the space is Symphony and Amos's The Bitcoin Standard. It's just a stunning piece of work, and it's available for anybody to read and comprehend and not have to have a computer science background to understand the historical significance of what we have here.
Great.
I have a few things to mention. First of all, coin.dance is a great website for stats. I've used it in some of my videos. I would recommend checking out my podcast. It's Crypto Ramble. I also have a book called The Privacy Coin Guide if you want to know a bit more about the technology behind privacy coins and how they work. And you can get the Particle Marketplace if you're interested at particle.io/downloads. And I also think one can educate themselves on the space, and there are tons of resources out there. I don't have any in particular. It's seriously there's so much information out there for anyone who wants to learn.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, all right, sure. All right. You really, yeah.
Awesome.
Do it.
I think nations are still very, very valid, even if the states are not necessarily always positive, but nations are. So if you try to imagine what would be, how would a nation support itself in a situation where cryptocurrencies are
A nation does not support itself. That's not how the economy works. So every individual supports themselves, and they make decisions for themselves, and they're only looking at their own bank account and their own assets and everything. So people are going to adopt the best thing for them, whatever that is. And the whole concept of a nation, all acting in concert, is completely fake. And it's all about individual, subjective thoughts and actions.
Do you mean paying taxes? Like, how do they pay taxes if everyone's using their own?
If you need anyone to defend you from external or internal.
So how would the society have certain functions being served that the government currently serves for them, such as an army or the roads, things like that?
Maybe courts and
Yeah. I don't, it's a blockchain, I'm sorry, I'm the moderator. I finally said, but it wouldn't be, I don't think it'd be that different, or it's somewhat of an orthogonal question. I mean, because even if a nation was on, an entire nation and with they didn't have a fiat currency anymore, there's still a currency, you can still tax it, you can still collect it, right? Like if we didn't have money and we were still on a barter economy, like money is useful to a state because it makes taxation more legible in terms of the ability to perform it, but it's like, you can still do it. So like the ability for a state to collect taxes, I don't think would be that substantially diminished, even if they didn't have the control over the banking system. All right, thank you everyone, sorry.